I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. On the Senate floor Tuesday, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer described the killing of a top Al-Qaeda leader as, quote, a major victory for the United States. President Joe Biden announced Monday evening that Al-Qaeda's leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri, was killed over the weekend by an American drone strike. Al-Zawahiri is considered a major force behind the September 11th attacks, as he most notably was serving as Al-Qaeda's second-in-command on September 11th and as the group's top leader for over a decade. Schumer believes that, quote, this successful mission will send a chill down the spine of terrorists all over the world.
Mr. President, over the last 5 days, we've seen what President Biden and a Democratic-led Congress are focused on getting done: bringing terrorists to justice, lowering costs, reducing inflation and the deficit, helping out our veterans, and better competing with countries like China. I want to begin with a word on last night's strike. Last night, President Biden reported that the United States conducted a strike that targeted and killed Ayman al-Zawahiri, the notorious mass murderer, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and one of the sick planners of the September 11th attacks, which in New York and around the country and the world we are still mourning. The strike against al-Zawahiri is a major victory for the United States. It will make our country and the entire world a safer place. It will also help bring an element of justice for the 9/11 families, as well as the many Americans who still carry the scars deep within. I applaud President Biden for bringing final justice to this loathsome murderer who orchestrated the killing of thousands of my fellow New Yorkers, including some people I knew quite well. I also want to thank the President's National Security Team for keeping Congress fully and currently informed throughout the process. And finally, I want to applaud the skill and bravery of our dedicated intelligence community service members and diplomats who work day and night, to keep America safe. This successful mission will send a chill down the spine of terrorists all over the world, and likewise will send a clear message to those who wish to cross our nation and harm our citizens. You will find no comfort, you will find no quarter. You can run, but you can't hide. We will hunt you down to the ends of the earth until justice is carried out. Now on the PACT Act. Every day that passes without action on the PACT Act is another day that our nation's veterans have to do the unthinkable: fight for basic health care benefits they rightfully deserve. 2 months ago, the Senate overwhelmingly passed this bill that secured the largest health care benefit expansion for our veterans in decades. We are dealing by and large with that exact bill again, so there's no justification to delay swift passage of the PACT Act any longer. I'm very hopeful that Republicans can work with Democrats to break through the impasse on the PACT Act immediately. We have offered Senators Paul and Senators Toomey votes on amendments they've been calling for, set at a 60-vote threshold, just like the cloture vote has a 60-vote threshold. We hope to reach an agreement where we can act on this bill as soon as today. But for that to happen, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle should work with us in good faith. There's no better message we can send to the veterans that have camped out for nights in front of the Capitol that their long wait and the wait of veterans everywhere is finally over. These brave Americans risked life and limb to keep our country safe, and the very least we can do is ensure they receive top care. I urge my colleagues to come together so we can get the PACT Act done ASAP, as soon as today. Now on the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. The Senate is on track to consider and pass the groundbreaking and truly historic Inflation Reduction Act later this week. I want to thank the Office of the Senate Parliamentarian and all of the committee staff on both sides of the aisle for their tireless work on the birdbath process that is currently underway. All text and CBO and JCT scores have been submitted for review in this process. The parliamentarian and her team have dedicated long hours on our legislation, and I think I can speak for all senators in thanking them for their work. We are on schedule to consider this bill later this week. The more that people learn about what's in the Inflation Reduction Act, the more they find reasons to praise the bill, and the more absurd the Republican attacks sound. This morning, a group of 126 leading economists, including seven Nobel Prize winners, 3 former chairs of the Council of Economic Advisors, 2 former Treasury secretaries, wrote a letter to congressional leaders calling for swift passage of our bill. They found that our bill, quote, will fight inflation and lower costs for American families while setting the stage for strong, stable, and broadly shared long-term economic growth. That's 7 Nobel laureates, 3 former chairs of the CEA, 2 former Treasury secretaries. Let me read it again. This bill will, quote, fight inflation and will lower costs for American families while setting the stage for strong, stable, and broadly shared long-term economic growth. Another analysis from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, hardly a liberal organization, began with the headline that, quote, the Inflation Reduction Act will help fight inflation. They believe it's aptly named. It is. The headlines go on and speak for themselves. The New York Times, quote, this is a headline, analysis deems Biden's climate and tax bill fiscally responsible. CNN, top economists say Democrats' health care and climate package will put downward pressure on inflation. The Hill, economists say reconciliation bill will lower prices for all Americans. These are just a few examples out of many. They join right alongside other voices, like former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, the Republican leader's favorite inflation expert, who said our bill is, quote, directly fighting the rate of inflation. And they join voices like that of Mark Zandi, Moody's top economist and former advisor to Senator John McCain, who said that our bill will have a material beneficial economic impact and will push inflation lower. Taken together, these voices say the same thing. The Inflation Reduction Act will lower costs, fight inflation, and secure historic wins in the fight against climate change. Now, Republicans have spent the last few days launching the same stale, predictable, and alarmist attacks they use against virtually any Democratic proposal, regardless of the facts. They've claimed that our bill is some crazy tax hike for the vast majority of Americans. Balderdash. This is the Republican bunk. They want to only help the rich when it comes to taxes, and when we do something against the rich, they howl. Our bill does not increase any taxes for small businesses and families making under $400,000 a year. Let me say that again. Our bill does not increase any taxes for small businesses and families making under $400,000 a year. What we will do is close loopholes that the largest businesses in this country have long abused to bring their tax rate down, sometimes to nothing. If nurses, if firefighters, if teachers pay their fair share of taxes, so too should mega corporations. Americans don't think that's crazy. It's just common sense. Here's the truth. Republicans will say anything to smear our proposal because they know they're on the wrong side of many of the issues our bill would solve. Republicans know they're on the wrong side of taxes after the American people rejected their sweeping boondoggle of a tax bill that overwhelmingly went to the wealthy and the largest corporations. Republicans know they're on the wrong side of health care and prescription drug reform. After spending years trying to repeal health care while cozying up to Big Pharma, Republicans don't have good answers for a bill that will finally bring drug costs down. And Republicans know they're on the wrong side of the climate debate. This bill is going to make the biggest investment in clean energy ever, which will not only reduce emissions by roughly 40%, but will also help prevent nearly 4,000 needless deaths and 100,000 asthma attacks each year. Republicans who have bowed down for years to our nation's biggest polluters know they have little credibility with the American people when it comes to climate. The American people do not want to hear the same fear-mongering over and over again from Republicans. They actually want us to take steps to bring costs down. They want us to preserve our planet for future generations, and they want to make sure everyone plays by the same rules on taxes and everything else. And they want to have high-quality health care without worrying about the bankrupt. The Inflation Reduction Act is going to take meaningful steps on all these issues, and Democrats will pass the bill in the coming days.